This is National Geographic Channel presents. They solve murders, catch spies, and prevent terrorist attacks. These are the federal agents of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Strategically located around the globe, they're on the job 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are one of the most revered law enforcement agencies on the planet. They are also one of the least understood, until now. In the 21st century, traditional battlefields have all but disappeared. For terrorists, any street is a potential war zone. Their target of choice is often the men and women who serve in America's armed forces. A small but elite group of federal agents stands against this evolving threat. The NCIS, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Disrupting terrorist plots in a hostile environment is physical and dangerous work. Agents must adapt to survive. And this is only a drill.
Clear around that corner, clear around that corner, clear around that corner. Move in there.
Comprised of a predominantly civilian staff, NCIS is the primary law enforcement arm of the Department of the Navy. Their job is to prevent and solve crimes that affect the people, families, and assets of the Navy and Marine Corps, and to protect them wherever they are around the world.
Mission of NCIS broadly is criminal investigative, counterintelligence, counterterrorism support to the Department of the Navy.
Today, there are 1,200 special agents who operate from more than 140 field offices around the globe. Each is highly skilled at collecting and assessing data, from processing crime scenes for the smallest of clues to putting together pieces of a forensic puzzle. Any crime concerning naval or marine personnel falls under NCIS jurisdiction, whether it's domestic violence, theft, an unsolved murder here at home, or a terrorist act perpetrated on foreign soil. In combat zones like Iraq, NCIS agents stand side by side with Special Ops and Marine forces. Intelligence unearthed by NCIS agents has helped coalition forces expose and thwart numerous attacks. Anywhere there is a Navy or Marine presence, there is a threat. Even on warships in the middle of the ocean. The Navy assigns an NCIS agent called the Special Agent Afloat to each carrier battle group. For the next 12 months, Special Agent Afloat Jonathan Oakes will be the sheriff of this vast seagoing city. He investigates all major crimes that take place at sea, from burglaries to assaults.
11:20, so we'll go to Chow at 11. Meet you in wardroom. Right.
But his most urgent task is detecting and disrupting any terror threats aimed at the carrier strike group or its personnel.
Matt and I are going in on...
Before the Theodore Roosevelt pulls into port, Agent Oakes, along with Navy security experts, must be certain it is safe.
Right.
The carrier makes a scheduled stop in the Middle East in less than a week.
Okay, Matt, I guess you'll be down at the port most of the time, which is the area in red for the most part, right? And
yeah, when I go in,
obviously that's where we'll be.
When I go in, we'll focus on that area there, and we'll do a...
By the time the ship arrives, he must be aware of everything from the layout of the port itself to reports of terrorist activities in the region.
The secured cargo area there, we'll barricade that off from the ship, and that'll give us basically a final protective line from that part of the pier down to the water side.
Does your guy on the beach know that the captain's pretty hypersensitive about any kind of watercraft or anything coming out to the ship?
We want to ensure that when the carrier pulls in, we have done everything we possibly can to ensure that a terrorist attack isn't going to occur to us.
107? Yes, sir. Okay.
NCIS agents know that even a mighty warship is not safe in this part of the world.
Yes, sir. We'll take care of it.
It is a lesson learned through bitter experience. After a 2-month voyage, the USS Cole, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, reaches the tip of the Arabian Peninsula. Soon, the 8,600-ton ship will proceed through the Persian Gulf and join up with the rest of the Fifth Fleet. But today, she's just hot and thirsty. The Cole makes a quick stop in the small country of Yemen to refuel. Filling the 21 fuel tanks in Yemen's Aden harbor should take about 4 hours.
It was about lunchtime. We were looking at getting out of Yemen about 1400 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So the crew, some of the crew was relieving each other to eat.
Most of the 295 enlisted sailors on this crew are young and inexperienced. Their average age is just 22 years old. A quarter are making their very first sea voyage. Thursday morning, the first day of the Muslim weekend. Aden Harbor swarms with fishing boats and other craft. One more small boat speeding through the water raises little concern. It's just after 11:15 a.m. There is a deafening blast.
The first thing that crossed my mind was that the fuel pod or the refueling process went wrong and that the fuel blew up.
You all right? Hey, get up. Up here.
The explosion impacts the ship dead center. A direct hit on the mess decks where many sailors are eating lunch. Dozens of injured sailors are trapped in the twisted metal below decks.
Hey, I take care of you. Take him and go find others. Let's go.
The ship is taking on water. More explosions seem likely.
We were really concerned about the fuel igniting, and the smell of the fuel was pretty bad, along with the post-explosive that we could smell as well.
Those who can make their way topside. The scene is hellish.
Some were temporarily blinded by the blast. I was treating patients, my shipmates, with shrapnel injuries as well as broken jaws.
Several crew members are already confirmed dead. Many more are missing. In the chaos, one terrible thought slowly grips the crew. This was no accident. It is an idea as startling as it is frightening. If more attacks are planned, these sailors will not be caught off guard a second time. Eight time zones away in the nation's capital, authorities react swiftly to the news that a U.S. warship may have been targeted. NCIS agents, along with their counterparts at the FBI, quickly outline priorities.
The immediate concern was additional attacks on the Cole, if that was in fact an attack. and then the rest of the fleet in the area. Might there be some subsequent attacks on other naval warships or other U.S. forces deployed?
U.S. armed forces around the world are put on alert. Since terrorism is suspected, the FBI takes the lead in the case. But NCIS agents are already on the ground in the Middle East. They are immediately dispatched to Yemen, beginning one of the largest criminal investigations in NCIS history. Stay tuned for more National Geographic Channel Presents. You're watching National Geographic Channel Presents. October 12, 2000. A massive explosion rocks the naval destroyer USS Cole as it refuels in Aden, Yemen. "17 sailors are dead. The question on everyone's mind, was this an accident or a deliberate act of murder? By midnight, agents from the NCIS Middle East Field Office arrive in Yemen. They know it's too risky to approach the Cole right away.
Seems like we have a thermal saturation in the area, basically.
Yeah.
The Cole had no communications other than a cell phone aboard the vessel, so we were concerned that someone approaching the Cole in a small boat at night would be vulnerable to friendly fire themselves.
Early the next morning, agents get their first look at the destruction. Their gut tells them that this damage is not the result of a refueling accident.
It almost looked as though a bullet had been shot from the outside of the ship to the inside of the ship. Had the explosion been internal to the ship, you would have seen the metal fatigue and fragments pointed outwards, but instead they were pointed inward towards the inside of the ship.
But who would have the audacity to launch a strike on a U.S. Navy destroyer? NCIS agents interview sailors who were on deck at the time of the blast.
We sent several of our folks out there. We're quickly getting information from witnesses on the ship who identified the small boat that came alongside that had two individuals in the boat, one of which seemed to be waving. Their initial reaction was that this was just one of many of the service contracting boats that were coming out to service the ship, or maybe just a pleasure boat coming by to wave to the American ship that was in port.
The sailors came face to face with the two suicide bombers. Agents suspect the killers were merely pawns in a much larger scheme.
We didn't know how many people would be involved. We just knew we had an attack, and we needed to make a number of inquiries.
NCIS and FBI agents convert hotel rooms into a makeshift command center. They quickly map out a plan. They list known enemies of the U.S. and cross-reference them with operatives in the area.
The history of terrorism throughout the Middle East shows that you don't just conduct an attack like this with one or two individuals who come up with their own thoughts or plans. It needs to be some type of a group work that's directed, that is managed by others.
Agents have seen this type of operation before. In 1998, terrorists simultaneously hit the U.S. embassies in the countries of Kenya and Tanzania. Car bombs kill hundreds of innocent people and injure thousands more. Authorities pin the attack on Al-Qaeda, a terrorist network whose name, at the time, is relatively unknown to the general public. Al-Qaeda quickly becomes the prime suspect in the Cole case. And it's not just because of the similar MO. Its leader, also has ties to Yemen.
In that part of the world, particularly Yemen, being Osama bin Laden's ancestral homeland, the concern that Al-Qaeda could operate in that area was something that was foremost in our mind.
In 1998, bin Laden declares that it is the duty of every Muslim to kill Americans wherever they can be found around the world. His Al-Qaeda organization has both the money and the motive to pull off the brazen attack on the Cole. Now investigators must prove it. With the ship finally stabilized, agents scour through the debris to look for clues. They search for things that don't belong to the Cole, like fiberglass shards from the attack boat, or the presence of foreign chemicals. Anything to help expose the identities of the suspects. Near the blast site, they find an explosive residue familiar to terrorism experts.
The explosive was some type of a Semtex-like or RDX-like explosive material, which would have been consistent with the type of explosives we've seen in other attacks throughout the Middle East.
The finding confirms that this plot goes deeper than the two men. Some biological evidence, including a single tooth possibly belonging to one of the dead assassins, is all agents have to identify the bombers and expose those who hired them. With 17 young American men and women confirmed dead, the task weighs heavily on the team. They must make sure this never happens again. Since the Cole bombing, NCIS has been forced to rethink how agents train and operate. Today, protecting personnel in hostile lands is one of the most hazardous duties. Whether in Iraq or Afghanistan, visiting military dignitaries are a high-profile target for terrorists. For NCIS agents escorting them, ambush and roadside bombs are a daily way of life.
Heads up, looks like we got some automobile accident up here or something.
So is knowing how to evade them.
ID, let's go, ambush, run, ambush, RPG, go, push.
This is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Georgia. Here, agents undergo instruction that rivals a stunt car driver's. Training is intense, and for good reason. It involves learning how to perform dangerous maneuvers while driving at high speeds.
Teach these maneuvers to greater enhance your skills, especially over in the theaters like Iraq and overseas, where the chance of vehicle contact, initiation over there are very, very great.
Simulations prepare agents for the moment when a routine protective service detail turns into an ambush. Terrorists rely on the element of surprise. They constantly update and change their tactics. But so does the NCIS. Here they train around the clock, because back in the real world, the job never stops. Especially on board an aircraft carrier. As the sole civilian law enforcement officer assigned to the USS Theodore Roosevelt, NCIS Special Agent Afloat Jonathan Oakes is on duty 24/7.
Shooter, stand by. Fire.
As the carrier nears its Middle East port of call, activity ramps up. As does Agent Oakes' stress level.
terrorists are going to try to attack assets, whether they be on the water, on land, through the air. If you have information that you know crime is...
The best weapons in the war on terror are solid up-to-the-minute intelligence and an educated fighting force.
You're going to have terrorist people, factions out there that are going to try and collect information on us. But they're going to know your sailors, they're going to know your U.S. for the most part, or at least Western, and they're going to ask you questions. If it's suspicious to you, report it. Get back to the camis.
Agent Oaks spends much of his time making the thousands of sailors aware of all the potential threats facing them and the carrier.
You're right. The taxi cab drivers ask it all the time. When I'm doing a research for a port visit, I've got to think about force protection, 1 for the ship, 2 for out in town, where the sailors are going to go. And it's not 1 or 2 sailors going to go somewhere. It's going to be groups of sailors going places. And those are the issues we worry about.
There's still a lot of work to be done before Agent Oaks can be confident that everyone on board the carrier will be safe. We'll continue with more National Geographic Channel Presents. And now, back to National Geographic Channel Presents. The USS Theodore Roosevelt is days away from a scheduled stop at a port of call in the Middle East. Soon, thousands of sailors will pull into Bahrain, a small island country just off the coast of Saudi Arabia in the Persian Gulf.
Guys, I appreciate Kaz, captains. I appreciate the Commodore coming in before the Admiral gets here, but I just want to give you my...
No one knows how vulnerable they are more than NCIS Special Agent afloat Jonathan Oaks.
Well, in a few days, we'll be heading into Bahrain. There's certain Al-Qaeda that are in there. There's certain terrorist groups that reside in Saudi Arabia as well. I want to know, has there been any recent terrorist involvement or activity within the country or the surrounding country?
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Please sit down.
Good afternoon, Admiral.
Naval commanders share the same concerns.
We'll be going in and on advance in a couple of days. Myself and the security officer will be going
They
in.
depend on Agent Oaks to help them determine if the port is safe.
The sailors will know what they're doing, and we'll do what we can to safeguard the sailors.
Ultimately, the captain is responsible for the multi-billion-dollar warship and the lives of the 5,300 sailors on board. Before he gives a green light to proceed into port, he wants more than a few assurances. He needs an exhaustive and detailed threat assessment, covering everything from regional terrorist activity to the habits of local drug dealers. He relies on Agent Oaks for facts, figures, and big-picture observations.
This is a smaller port than our last port, so we kind of, percentage-wise, we're bigger presence, footprint there.
The threat assessment hasn't changed. I don't foresee it to change, but I'll talk with all the agents on the beach.
Mm-hmm. The overall assessment is a huge contributing factor on whether or not the captain decides to pull his carrier into a port.
Are you taking the shore patrol officer in with you?
That assessment essentially will belay fears or heighten his fear, either one.
Intelligence received from even the most reliable sources is not always ironclad. Today, Agent Oaks flies into Bahrain to inspect the port for himself.
I want to know, can a small boat get out to the carrier from where this is? Can a terrorist in a car bomb somehow make its way to the entry control point through certain routes? It's a very important issue that I have to look at every time I go in.
Conducting any kind of investigation on foreign soil poses challenges. Five years earlier, NCIS agents working the USS Cole bombing case in Yemen learned just how hard it can be. Poor communications, language and cultural barriers are just a few of the obstacles confronting U.S. agents.
Yeah, as usual, bad connection.
Working with a distrustful Yemen government is another.
They were very cooperative with us, but again, some of them were very suspicious. What was the true meaning for our presence in country? Did we have an ulterior motive?
Yemeni officials insist on spearheading the investigation themselves. Critical information is sometimes slow in reaching American investigators. But they do share an intriguing story from two boys questioned at Aden Harbor on the morning of the attack. Shortly before the explosion, the boys saw two men preparing to take their boat out into the harbor. One of the men offered the boys money to look after their SUV and trailer. The two men disappeared into the harbor. They never returned for their vehicle. NCIS agents believe the two boys had unwittingly helped the bombers avoid detection.
The guys who launched the boat left their four-wheel drive SUV in a trailer. It would have been a bit unusual to have left that without raising some suspicions, and it's our belief that they frankly paid them to watch it so that these kids wouldn't call the police right away before they were able to get out to the coal and conduct the attack.
The information provides the first solid clue to the bombers' identities. Starting with the SUV registration, agents expose a convoluted trail that leads to two men. A safe house used by the same men is soon discovered. Less than 10 days after the attack on the coal, NCIS and FBI agents get a first-hand look inside the world of the bombers. They dust for fingerprints and carefully preserve many biological samples. Some of the evidence is chilling. And a sure sign of martyrdom rituals.
It was very, very revealing to go into a safe house and discover where the homicide bombers actually anointed themselves, shaved their body hair, as oftentimes they will do when they attempt to martyr themselves, and how they prepared in that location for the attack.
The findings ultimately reveal something even more important. A DNA match between the hairs taken from the safe house and the biological evidence collected from the coal. Agents finally have the names of the two bombers. Hassan al-Kamri and Ibrahim al-Nubris are responsible for the worst attack on a naval vessel since World War II. The details of their lives leading up to the bombing quickly unfold. Agents learn of additional safe houses, metal shavings, chemical residue, and a variety of tools tell a compelling story of how the men prepared the boat and explosives. NCIS has exposed a well-organized terror cell.
We could tell both from the sophistication of the attack as well as the fact that we had 3 different sites and some level of planning in those sites that it was a relatively sophisticated cell.
You see all this here? Yeah, that was like...
That gave us significant credibility to our hypothesis that this was an al-Qaeda attack.
Other members of the cell could be among those already in custody. But the Yemenis won't allow Americans to interview their prisoners directly. Instead, FBI and NCIS agents must write down their questions and work through an interpreter, even though many of the agents speak Arabic. for a 21st century investigative force like NCIS, the process is tediously slow. Keeping the coal investigation on track will require diligence, savvy, and an unimaginable act of violence. National Geographic Channel Presents will continue in a moment. You're watching National Geographic Channel Presents. Less than 2 weeks after the bombing of the USS Cole in October 2000, the 17 fallen sailors make their final journey home. Disabled but unbound, the Cole begins a slow tow back to the States a few weeks later. It is a point of pride with her surviving crew that she will not be left in Yemen.
We weren't going to allow our enemy to have a trophy sitting there in Yemen. That's what they wanted. They wanted a trophy. They wanted to degrade the American people, and they wanted to degrade our Navy. And we were bound and determined not to let that happen.
NCIS agents under the direction of the FBI remain behind in Yemen. Determined to bring the masterminds of the attack to justice, they face fierce opposition.
Nothing came easy. We were not allowed to interview or interrogate the Yemeni nationals. Those had to be done through the intermediary of the security forces.
The process is tedious. The investigation bogs down. Agents fear it will stall altogether. Then, in an instant, the world changes forever.
Hey, what's going on?
We're in the embassy in Sana'a, Yemen. And we're talking to New York about our strategy and how we're going to be further negotiations with the Yemenis for items that we consider of evidence, we needed for evidence.
Sure.
New York told us they had to get off the phone because they just heard a bomb had gone off.
September 11th, 2001. The impact of this day quickly reaches all the way to the shores of Osama bin Laden's ancestral homeland.
The government of Yemen wanted to show that we deplore terrorists. We deplore the attacks that occurred. There's no reason for innocent people to get killed. The Yemenis had said to us, whatever you need. We are so sorry this occurred in your country, and we want to provide whatever help we can.
How many? 2, 4, 6, 8?
Help comes in the form of unfettered access to all of the Cole bombing suspects currently in custody. NCIS agents conduct a new round of intensive interviews that shine light on the identities of more al-Qaeda operatives. Over the next several months, Yemeni authorities arrest many of them, including al-Qaeda's chief of operations in the Persian Gulf. In September 2004, nearly 4 years after the bombing of the USS Cole, Yemeni courts send 5 al-Qaeda terrorists to prison. Among them are 2 of the principal conspirators, Faid al-Quso and Jamal al-Badawi. Abdul Rahim al-Nashiri, the mastermind behind the attack, is condemned to death. Today, threats against warships are as real as they were in October 2000. But there is one big difference. Now NCIS agents are better prepared to detect and defend against any sign of danger.
Derek, I appreciate you bringing me out today. What I'm hoping to figure out is,
in advance of the USS Theodore Roosevelt's arrival in Bahrain, Special Agent afloat Jonathan Oakes has come to inspect the port firsthand.
Does it take a while to get out there from here?
No, it should only take a few minutes.
So these two, all the U.S. has this side, huh?
Pretty much from the middle of the pier on out is U.S. And sometimes
Agent Oaks scopes out exactly where the carrier will pull in and how it will be positioned along the pier.
I know that there's a lot of speedboats in this area, pleasure craft, especially during the summer. Do they ever try to come in and try and test the integrity of your security perimeter?
occasionally you do. More often than not, Port Authority briefs these guys on what they are and are not allowed to do around.
He looks for all areas that could be vulnerable. Each one will need to be secured.
You know, I haven't had too much of a threat.
Protecting a carrier and its crew in a foreign land is an awesome responsibility. And there is no greater asset than NCIS agents like Mike Sliwa, already stationed here, to help familiarize the agent afloat with the area.
Special Agent John Oaks, he's the afloat agent on the Theodore Roosevelt.
How's it going?
NCIS on the ground is there to support the agent afloat. We're on the ground to facilitate and make relationships with the nation that they're visiting, to facilitate a smooth ship visit, make sure the sailors stay safe, make sure that they make it back on the ship when it leaves and that the ship leaves in one piece.
Before anything comes out to the ship, that's when most of the inspections are going to be done.
Navy and Marine Corps security experts are also on hand to ensure everything goes smoothly.
Once the dogs sweep everything clear topside and sequester the crew, we'll go ahead and splash, check everything, get 100% coverage.
This morning, their sweep of the port will extend to the bottom of the harbor floor. Divers and bomb experts search for anything out of the ordinary. Ultimately, to stop terrorists, agents have to consider every possible avenue of attack.
Force protection isn't a single item. It's a group of items from different people to make sure that the ships stay safe. It can be anywhere from making sure there's fence lines put around the ships, standoff distance, armed boats in the water to keep other curious boats away, make sure K-9s are at checkpoints looking for bombs, meeting with the port security, local police. All that's incorporated in force protection.
Establishing a comfort level in an unfamiliar environment takes a lot of time. It also takes the full cooperation of the local government security forces. NCIS agents make every effort to keep the trust and support of the authorities in Bahrain.
Terrorists are everywhere in the Middle East. The Bahrainis share their information with us. If there's any issues that we hear about, they're usually the first ones to let us know what they are, so we can in turn take a look at it and reevaluate our stance on force protection and where to put ships, where not to put ships.
Terrorists aren't the only trouble facing Navy sailors disembarking in Bahrain.
Just want to introduce you guys, John Oaks is the Special Agent Afloat of the Theodore Roosevelt. Just want to go over a couple of...
Criminals trafficking in drugs and prostitution are also a constant problem.
I would just tell your sailors just to be real cautious and aware, because we have taxi cab drivers that are offering them hashish and also cocaine.
We also have suspicious vehicles that were seen near the base. Our surveillance...
When it comes to the well-being of the Theodore Roosevelt's crew, every threat, no matter how seemingly insignificant, is treated seriously.
To discuss any issues specific with the embassy, we had some recent demonstrations occur where we had large crowds get out a little bit out of hand, roughly the size of them get out a little bit beyond what the security can handle.
It is late into the night.
Now the duty agent, they can pretty much get a hold of the surveillance units.
Acting on information gleaned from agents familiar with the area, Agent Oaks inspects Bahrain's streets.
A big restaurant district is back that way also.
Such surveillance work often takes agents into the world's most dangerous neighborhoods in the dead of night. But it must be done.
You find sailors do a lot of walking up and down this area when ships come in?
They walk everywhere. Take cabs, visit all the restaurants and the bars.
Agent Oaks returns to the carrier the following morning. With just hours to go before the Theodore Roosevelt is scheduled to pull in, it's time to present his findings to the captain. Stay tuned for more National Geographic Channel Presents. We now return to National Geographic Channel Presents. The October 2000 attack on the USS Cole taught NCIS many lessons. First and foremost, always be vigilant.
There is an ever constant and present threat that I don't think any one of us in our line of business could deny that it could happen again tomorrow.
Complacency can lead to disaster. In the wake of the Cole bombing, no one understands this better than NCIS agents.
The Cole itself allowed us to understand different avenues that will be attempted to harm U.S. forces.
Agent Oaks has met with intelligence and security experts in Bahrain and personally checked out the port and surrounding neighborhoods. Today, all of his efforts to safeguard the Theodore Roosevelt will be put to the test.
Sure thing. You have the deck.
In just a few hours, the ship will dock. Agent Oaks is ready to brief the captain on the potential threats he has uncovered.
Tell me what you found out.
Well, really no different than what we expected, so that's a good thing. No new information. The threat assessment holds still.
You know, with the current events happening both within the region and outside the region, everything, the Admiral's kind of concerned about our posture, make sure that we're unpredictable.
Absolutely.
Out there.
Now, I did check on the...
Relying on solid intelligence and his own intuition, Agent Oaks is confident that Bahrain is reasonably safe.
So we should be pretty good going in my opinion.
The captain agrees. The Theodore Roosevelt is cleared to proceed into port as scheduled.
It's a taxi issue.
Agent Oaks has one more task to complete: alerting 5,300 sailors to dangers they might encounter once they are off the ship.
Hello, Big State Team. This is Special Agent Jonathan Oaks with NCIS. With me is Senior Shore Patrol.
The briefing is broadcast throughout the carrier on closed-circuit television. It covers everything from which parts of town sailors should avoid to how to identify suspicious behavior.
And be mindful of your surroundings. When I say be mindful, as you're going out in town, as you're going around from bar to bar, or you're going from a shopping mall to back to the base, be mindful of your surroundings and understand that some people may be trying to watch you. Look for surveillance. Look for surveillance that might be on foot.
Despite the calm waters in front of Agent Oaks, a war is raging not too far away. But for the moment, he has done his part to ensure the safety of the crew that serves on the USS Theodore Roosevelt.
I am proud of the fact I'm able to serve my country in such a way that I can come out here and provide my expertise to the carrier, to the captain, and allow myself to be a part of what's going on.
The need for the NCIS has never been greater. Global threats can occur at any moment. In fact, shortly after the Theodore Roosevelt strike group pulls into port, disturbing news comes from Yemen. Jamal al-Badawi and Fayed al-Quso, two key players behind the attack on the USS Cole, escaped from their jail cell along with 21 other prisoners, including many suspected terrorists. The men responsible for the deaths of 17 U.S. sailors are once again at large. Should the terrorists attempt another Cole-style attack, NCIS will not be caught off guard. Their global intelligence network searches for any trace of the two men. When they surface, law enforcement in every port will be waiting.
Clear that doorway! Clear that vehicle!
Staying a step ahead of terrorists is top priority.
Move it! Come on!
And it is the driving force that propels the determined men and women of NCIS into the future.
Whatever tactics the terrorists are employing, and they will continue to seek innovative and novel tactics, it's up to the NCIS to educate ourselves and then try to adapt, train, and focus on methodology and approaches that will counter that.
It is an endless challenge, and the demands of their job change daily, but their commitment does not.
Okay, you guys.